Hi everyone, welcome back to Numinosophy Academy. I'm Lewis. Today I'm going to be thinking about the commodification of the church, specifically the LDS church. That is to treat the church as if it were a mere commodity. So there are two books pertinent to this. In 1993, there was a book by George Ritzger called The Mcdonaldization of Society. And then, following up, there was a book in 2000 by John Drane called The Mcdonaldization of the Church. So the thesis is pretty simple. It's the idea that there are these different kind of institutions within society, such as the church, which we are transforming more and more into the image of McDonald's, into the image of the fast food industry. So the idea is basically, if you go back to kind of the turn of the century, the 19th into the 20th century, you have John Ford creating his automated production line, you know, the Ford cars, moving along the production line, and all the different processes being divided up into individual labor jobs in order that you can get more and more cars off the production line as quickly as possible. And then the fast food industry is just taking that same principle, but applying it to food. So, you know, take McDonald's, take the Big Mac. The Big Mac is just a series of processes. So the meat is cooked for a specific length of time, and then the meat is given to the assembler, and the assembler takes the 3 pickles and places them in such and such a way on the burger, and the sauce is applied with a particular machine that applies just the right amount of special sauce to the Big Mac, and presto, within a very short period of time, everyone gets their Big Mac. And so the fast food industry is characterized as being repeatable, these repeatable processes, predictable and reproducible, right? Whether you're ordering a Big Mac in the United States somewhere, or here in England, or in Paris, or on the other side of the world, it more or less doesn't matter. You're more or less getting the same thing. And so we can think about this in terms of Christianity. You get kind of cookie cutter religion, as it were. So you might get, a particular class or a particular service, which is already pre-written, predefined, set out for you. And all you have to do, is if you're a kind of franchise McDonald's owner, is take that pre-prepared service off the shelf and deliver it to your congregation as it's meant to be delivered. And what that means is that you end up with religion, with spirituality, being almost more performative than about spirituality. It's not so much about one's ability to kind of creatively respond to a particular intuited spiritual impulse within the community at any given time. Rather, the proficient religious practitioner is someone who is able to perform these religious functions as have been given to them from the religious institution most faithfully. Those that are able to bring a bit of kind of a performative energy to the delivering of these particular services, sermons, lessons, and so forth. If you think of like a McDonald's franchise, for example, if they're opening a new McDonald's franchise in a particular area, then McDonald's will be able to, utilize spreadsheets and the population of an area and, trends, buying trends, and so forth, in order to work out how profitable such a franchise location is likely to be. So it's highly predictable and highly controlled. So it's not responding kind of dynamically to any needs as they arise. Rather, it is providing a product that is perceived to be needed within any given area. And so likewise, you get within any kind of denominational structures a similar kind of model to this franchise model arising. You will get, for example, evangelical churches in the south of the United States, for example, deciding on implementing plants in particular communities, and if they have the resources, they are able to work out what kind of structures need to be put in place in order for that particular church, that particular house group perhaps, to be effective. So it's a very kind of formulaic way of doing church. So you definitely see it within evangelicalism, and you definitely see it within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as well. It feels very calculated, as if there is a particular product that's being offered, fast food religion, to put it in the most critical terms, a fast food religious product which you're able to work out the likelihood of that particular product being effective in any given area. And then the way it's delivered in that area is again in this very formulaic way, that you're offering very specific services to meet very specific needs within these communities. So this is, mechanizing or systematizing what happens in day-to-day life within the church so absolutely that you, in effect, mechanize the spirit out. It's no longer really about one's kind of, authentic response to the spiritual life. Rather, it's about a need being met in very consumerist terms. There's a product on offer, and I, as the seeker, I'm going to find the best product available to me and buy that product, buy into that product. So I guess being in a kind of, in the West, being in the consumerist West, we very much tend to think of ourselves in these terms as a consumer going out to give our time to or give our money to particular products or services. And it's very difficult, I think, for Westerners to think of a way around that problem because we just so naturally think about everything in those terms, which is a pity, especially when it comes to spirituality, it seems. If anything is not governed by, these principles, these market principles of supply and demand, it feels like religion and spirituality should be paramount, right? If we're seeking after spiritual truth, and we want to kind of delve into any particular religious tradition in order to discern what the truth within that religious tradition is, it doesn't feel like that should be a consumerist process. It feels like it should supersede such kind of trite and shallow market considerations, and rather it should be about something which is beyond such petty things towards higher truths or deeper truths that go beyond such things. And of course it's been well documented how money focused the LDS Church is. John DeLynn has done a few videos discussing how corrupt the hierarchy of the LDS Church is when it comes to their management or mismanagement of money, insisting on the tithing and only giving a very small amount to, worthy charitable causes, and on and on you could go down that line. I'm thinking more, however, not about the kind of specific implementation, because in a way, to get I don't know, wrapped up in that problem, the way money is being distributed in this way, is to kind of grant that is the way that we should be thinking about spirituality to begin with. But rather, I would want to think about Christianity or the LDS Church in terms that supersede mere market forces. And so this Mcdonaldization of the church has kind of sucked the soul out of the church, as it were, and, resulting in the experience of church being something very predictable, very mechanized. You know what is going to happen. You know what the experience is going to be. You know what, as a consumerist, you're expecting to get. It's not a kind of living, breathing, dynamic spiritual experience. You're rather just, going through the motion Sunday to Sunday. That's the danger, at least. And yet, of course, you can contrast that with the amount of seekers there are, or people that, go on YouTube and spend time thinking about philosophy or theology or spirituality, maybe dabble in some New Age ideas, or come onto Numinosophy Academy and, hear some random person talk about religion. This is all kind of attempting to substitute this lack that is not being met within the religious sphere. It doesn't speak to us. It doesn't speak to me. It feels meaningless and often feels boring. And, but I don't know what the answer is. This is the trouble with this. We kind of think now in such market-led terms that it's difficult to think beyond that paradigm now. But it feels like whatever that different way of thinking about it is, that more authentic way of thinking about it, is the antithesis of the fast food approach. It's not about merely trying to identify needs and plug those needs with particular services and products. It's about being together and allowing the spirit to move, whatever that means within your particular religious or secular context. And I also feel like this whole Mcdonaldization idea does tie in with identity politics. This whole idea that there's a particular identity on the shelf which I can buy into and identify with, that then says everything that there is supposedly to say about me, right? So if I, buy into these particular woke identities, like if I identify as a bisexual, for example, which is increasingly popular amongst millennials and Gen Z people, then it's a way of kind of saying that I buy into liberal normative culture, and I'm not going to seek to oppress any other minority identity groups which are also oppressed in one way or another. It's like it's buying into that particular brand. And this is also the case with religion as well, it feels like. So like with the LDS Church, you are buying into a particular image, right? There's like a whole kind of list of views and policies and ideas, and even a look which goes along with being a Mormon, that in saying I am a Mormon identifies me with all of those ideas, right? To the point where if someone says they are a Mormon, that gives you a pretty damn good idea about what they believe on specific issues. And in a way, that itself feels like it's kind of antithetical to the true spiritual walk, in which, if you're kind of going on your own spiritual walk and exploring these topics as an individual, coming up against each individual idea, then surely you're going to come to different conclusions. You're not all going to coalesce around a very specifically articulated set of criteria which make up your particular religious identity. You know, it's part of the problem with having religion so intrinsically linked with money. You know, it's not so much, you would think it wouldn't be such of a problem within the LDS Church because there aren't even paid, there are obviously paid members of the LDS Church, but I mean within individual wards, the individuals leading church services are not paid. And so you would think that that would allow for a kind of decoupling between religion and spirituality and money. And it seems that that is specifically, going after the example of St. Paul, what Joseph Smith was driving at in his early spiritual journey. And yet now money and religion in the LDS Church is so intrinsically linked. And therefore you get into the realm of needing to, on some level, buy your salvation. And of course, you do need to buy your salvation within the LDS Church, because in order to hold a temple recommend, you need to be a tithe-paying member of the church. So, you know, spirituality tied to money feels wrong. It feels like you should be able to seek after the deepest spiritual truth and at the same time being able to eschew the material world, at least in that dimension of one's life. When it comes to one's spirituality, one should be able to eschew that dimension, even if we are unable to escape it in all the other more mundane dimensions of life. Because when money's involved, then you have interest groups, and you have, you know, members which are like Mitt Romney, right? Mitt Romney is, you know, even though it's not explicitly stated, is, you know, representing the LDS Church. And you would think if such a candidate was to become president, for example, he would in some small way represent the interests of this specific religious body, in the same way that, you know, Biden, who was just elected a few months ago, is Roman Catholic. And so you would think in some small way he must represent Roman Catholic interests within the United States, because you have these different lobbying communities, and religion is no different. Evangelicalism is a lobbying community, the Mormon churches, the Roman Catholic churches, and, you know, they're competing with one another. They're competing each other for economic and political and cultural control. And that is weird, I think. It's weird to think that religion should be vying after space in that way, in that very market forces, market-led way. It feels like spirituality should again be beyond such mundane and crass concerns. So theology should not be commercialized, which is of course ironic for me to say that here on YouTube, because that is basically what I am doing. This is the commercialization of theology in small consumable bites for the YouTube audience. And I guess my only hope would be that even though I recognize that is underlying what I'm doing here, it's not the purpose of what I'm doing here. The purpose here is in order to create a conscientious community which can think critically about theological and religious topics. But that's obviously a difficult line, a difficult balance to make, because you can very easily fall into the arena of creating content for sake of creating content, which is, I don't know, it's a dodgy space to be in, which is why I much rather, lean upon my own interest, allow my own interest to kind of inform my desire to create videos. Anyway, that is just some random musings I've had on the topic of religion and consumerism. Thanks for watching. As always, if you enjoy this content, please do like this video and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. And if you'd like to check out another video on Numinosophy Academy's channel, then YouTube recommends that one. Cheers again, and I will see you in the next one.